It may be that they are prejudiced. Indiscriminate UN mortar and machine gun fire makes no distinction between civilian and soldier, old and young. As in most wars, it is the innocent who are hurt and have to carry the heaviest burden of man's inhumanity to man. The UN, unable to achieve its goal of subjugating Katanga to the central government, bides its time and agrees to a ceasefire. Here, President Chambé attends a meeting under UN auspices to conclude an agreement which reaffirms Katanga's right to remain independent of the central government and again assures Katanga of non-interference by UN forces into internal Katanga affairs. Even as Chambé negotiates, UN forces make their way through the rubble of shell Katangese homes and businesses in search of African souvenirs. And in Leopoldville, President Kasavubu, assured of help in a personal note from Khrushchev, calls a cabinet meeting to plan future moves against Katanga. In Katanga, people pay homage to those who gave their lives for their country. In a church in Elizabethville, war widows, many of them carrying their children, attend the church requiem for Katanga's war victims. Their flag is at half-mast, for this too is Flanders Fields. We are the dead, short days ago we lived, saw dawn, felt sunset glow, loved and were loved. But for the living, there is much work to be done. Now, relying on UN promises, Katanga must rebuild. It must grow, step up production, and more than ever demonstrate to a largely hostile world the vitality of its industry and of its people. In spite of their recent sorrow, readjustment to normal life quickly takes place. In their off time, Katangese enjoy gymnastics and sports, and for the enjoyment of old and young, games such as sack hopping and barrel rolling. In Katanga, all social life centers around the family. The Kutawis are representative of many thousands of married couples in this country. Their home is a modest one. It does not have many of the conveniences and luxuries of the West, but it is spotless and in striking contrast to the huts and shacks seen elsewhere in the Congo. While the peace and work of everyday life once again descends upon the Katangese, the UN takes advantage of the truce by pouring unprecedented numbers of combat troops and military equipment into Katanga. Russian ships continue to unload crates filled with arms and ammunition, and unmarked Russian airplanes, always at the disposal of Central Congo needs, day and night airlift Central Congolese soldiers to Katanga. Troops which, according to UN policy and statement, were not to be employed in a fight against Katanga. More UN jets arrived to reinforce the already sizable US-built jets. An Ethiopian pilot flying a US Sabre jet arrives at a UN-occupied airfield in Katanga, where he is greeted by the UN commander. UN forces steadily reinforce the already nearly 20,000 men armed with bazookas, machine guns, tanks, and 75mm field artillery, as matched against Katanga's army of several thousand men, are now deployed at all strategic points of Elizabethville, ready at moment's notice to launch an attack with superior forces. Over and over again, the UN assures President Chambé that the United Nations has no further intention of intervening in Katanga's internal affairs, nor intention of again employing armed force against Katanga. These statements are taken in good faith, but as they are made almost simultaneously, UN planes take to the air to drop communist-style leaflets on Baluba villages in Katanga. This in an effort to incite the tribesmen into a bloody insurrection against the Katangese government. And giant US Air Force Globemasters in a continuous and gigantic operation ferry UN troops in combat gear into Katanga. At the provocation of the communist-infiltrated central government, the situation in Katanga assumes more and more the explosive possibilities of a powder keg. 3 months after the first initial UN attack on Katanga on a quiet day, November 21st, 1961, the powder keg explodes into bloody violence as UN forces heeding the request of the central government to subjugate at any cost and crush Katanga to its authority in a final drive, forge ahead, supported by jet fighters and bombers to clear a path of death and destruction, which not only makes a mockery of the UN resolution to the world not to use force to advance the cause of the communist-backed central government, but also shatters the myth of UN forces sent to the Congo to bring peace. The UN command, remembering the Katangi's fighting potential, is not taking any chances this time. To destroy resistance by Katangi's military and civilians, Elizabethville receives a devastating shelling from bombers, field artillery, and bazookas. The strategic policy, a complete reign of terror. After which UN troops supported by tanks and armored cars zip into the heart of Elizabethville, converging on all points of resistance, grimly determined to end Katangi's independence and to establish central government dictatorship. At the heart of the city, UN advance is halted when Katangis, including Europeans, make a stand and in close-range combat that ranges for 8 hours, puts up a fierce resistance to UN advance. But the odds are uneven, and the Katangis, vastly outgunned by numerically superior and much better equipped UN forces, are being pushed back. It is soon apparent that the Katangis are fighting a losing battle against the powerful UN forces. UN troops advancing from all sides systematically wipe out all resistance pockets, and in the process, machine guns and bazooka civilian cars trying to escape from the city, killing many innocent civilians running for their lives to find cover from UN fire. This truck, which had made an attempt to carry refugees, among them women and children, out of Elizabethville, was deliberately bazookaed by UN Ethiopian troops. Looking at this picture, these words from the UN Charter come to mind: to stand together in common dedication to the cause of liberty and peace, to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights and in the dignity of the work of the human person. Words which were made a mockery of by UN action. The UN consolidates its forces in a final drive to crush all remaining resistance and to force the unconditional capitulation of Katanga as Katangis surrender to the UN. UN patrols make their way through the rubble and burning ruins of what was only days before a lively and sovereign city. A picture of wanton destruction executed by the world's foremost peace organization. His people in severe distress and Elizabethville at the verge of destruction, Chambé speaks to a hurriedly gathered assembly of the international press and appeals desperately to President Kennedy and the free world to stop the senseless slaughter. Chambé takes reporters on an eyewitness tour of an Elizabethville hospital, which, although clearly identified by Red Cross markings and flags, had been bombed and shelled by the UN. December 21st, 1961. In a last-ditch effort to protect his people, Chambé literally puts his head into the lion's mouth when he flies to Katona to discuss peace with the central government. Chambé does not turn to the UN, as it is clear that the attack on Katanga came at the direct request of the central government. A truce is declared when Chambé vows a scorched earth policy that will leave the conquerors nothing but ashes if the invasion continues. Returning to Elizabethville, Chambé tells his people that Katanga will not oppose Congo unification if it is permitted enough self-government to prevent a communist takeover. But the price of Katanga's fight for freedom has been heavy. Streets once busy and filled with the healthy sound of traffic and trade are deadly quiet and almost deserted. The Katangese economy comes to a standstill. Communication centers, the radio station, the post office are destroyed. Power lines and telephone wires are down. Katanga reels from this savage blow. Casualties are high. Volunteers aid the Red Cross in working around the clock. Hospitals are severely damaged, overcrowded, and without electric power. Doctors have to perform emergency operations under petroleum or candlelight. Many of the slain men and women were civilians who bore no arms. A sworn statement by 46 doctors at the scene characterizes as murder the action of UN troops in machine gunning civilians and Red Cross ambulances.